Picture this. You're out on the vast, unbroken serenity of the open ocean. A luxury cruise ship is just gliding along under a canopy of stars. Inside, people are laughing, there's music playing, it's the warmth of 1,000 shared vacations. But then, out of nowhere, that peace just shatters. A catastrophic storm hits with absolutely zero warning. The wind starts howling, tearing across the upper decks, and this massive, heavy ship actually begins to violently capsize. In a matter of seconds, the calm is completely gone, replaced by the terrifying sound of rushing water and just absolute panic.
And right in the middle of this unbelievable chaos, a husband and wife are desperately fighting their way through the dark, tilted corridors. They are literally racing against freezing water that's rising up around their ankles. Finally, they burst out onto the outer deck and reach the very last lifeboat. But as they step forward, a crewman holds up his hand. They are hit with a horrifying reality. There is only room for one more person. What happens next goes against absolutely everything we think we know about love. In that split second, staring into the freezing wind, the husband grabs his wife, pushes her firmly behind him, and jumps right into the lifeboat himself.
The lifeboat starts lowering into the dark, crashing waves, and the wife is just left there, standing completely alone on the deck of a sinking ship, while the icy wind whips around her. She looks down at the man she promised to spend her life with, the man who literally just abandoned her to save his own life. As the ship groans and starts its final descent into the abyss, she leans over the railing and shouts one final sentence down to her husband. Think about that for a second. Put yourself on that freezing deck. What do you think she shouted?
The classroom debate. You see, different answers arise when we look at tragedy from the outside. When a teacher presented this exact story to her class, bathed in soft afternoon light, she paused, looked at her captivated students, and asked them the exact same question I just asked you. What do you think the wife shouted as the ship went down?
As you can imagine, the room instantly erupts. The reactions are completely visceral and electric. Students are angrily shouting out things like, "I hate you," or "I was blind to ever love you." And honestly, they're angry, and rightfully so. But amidst all that noise, there's a young boy sitting in the back row who is entirely silent. The teacher notices his quiet demeanor and gently asks him for his thoughts. The boy looks up, eyes completely steady, and quietly says, "Teacher, I believe she would have shouted, 'Take care of our child.'"
The teacher is just stunned. I mean, this kid completely bypassed all that anger and found this profound, selfless sorrow. So she asks him, "Have you heard this story before?" The boy shakes his head. "No," he says softly, "but that is exactly what my mom told my dad right before she died of a terrible disease." A heavy hush falls over the entire classroom. The teacher looks at him and says, "Your answer is right."
The diary's secret. Because the story actually doesn't end in those freezing waters. You see, the husband survived that terrible night. He went home to an empty house, carrying this immense weight that no one else could see. For years, he raised their young daughter completely single-handedly. He played the role of both father and mother, weathering all the quiet storms of parenthood on his own. And eventually he passed away, taking a profound, silent secret with him to the grave.
So the years fly by. The daughter is now fully grown, and she's grieving the loss of the man who gave her absolutely everything. One day, she's slowly sorting through his belongings, and deep inside a dusty drawer, she uncovers her father's old, weathered diary. As she turns those fragile pages, breathing in the scent of aged paper, she finds an entry dated right around the time of the shipwreck. And what she reads completely rewrites her family's entire history.
It turns out, right before her parents boarded that cruise ship, they had received some really devastating news. The mother had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Her days were already strictly numbered. So when that catastrophic storm hit and they found themselves standing at the edge of that lifeboat with only one seat left, it wasn't an act of cowardice. In that absolute critical moment of life and death, the father rushed to the only chance of survival, not to save himself, but to make absolutely sure his daughter wouldn't become an orphan.
In the quiet of his room, carrying an unimaginable burden of grief and public judgment, the father had written these agonizing words: "How I wished to the bottom of the ocean with you, but for the sake of our daughter, I can only let you lie forever below the sea alone." Think about that. It was the ultimate sacrifice, completely disguised as the ultimate betrayal.
Section 3. Beyond the surface. Understanding others requires us to look past our initial shock. When the teacher finished reading that diary entry to her class, the room was dead silent. And I bet you feel a shift within yourself right now, too. We were incredibly fast to judge that husband, weren't we? Based on just one single out-of-context action, we completely assumed he was a coward. We assumed he was selfish. We had absolutely no idea about the quiet, agonizing heroism that actually drove his decision.
The deepest truths of our lives are almost never visible on the surface. That quiet student in the classroom understood a fundamental reality. The concepts of good and evil, of right and wrong, are bound up in these hidden complications that are incredibly difficult to unravel from the outside looking in. It really forces us to ask ourselves, how many times in our own lives do we focus strictly on the surface? How often do we judge someone's actions without taking the time to actually understand the heavy, unseen depths beneath them? Section 4. Everyday Unseen Sacrifices. Okay, let's dive into this, because everyday actions often hide profound depths. Now, sure, we might never find ourselves on a sinking ship making a split-second choice between life and death, but the true heart of this story, it plays out in small, quiet ways all around us. Every single day. The people we interact with are constantly making unseen sacrifices and silent choices rooted in deep compassion, and a lot of the time it goes completely unnoticed by the rest of the world.
Just think about the ordinary actions of the people around you. You know those friends who always seem to grab the check and pay the bill first? They don't do it because they just have endless wealth. They do it because they value your friendship far above their money. And what about those colleagues who quietly take the initiative at work, always picking up the slack without complaining? They aren't doing it because they're naive. They do it because they carry a profound sense of responsibility. Think about the person who swallows their pride and apologizes first after a bitter argument. They do that because they value having you in their life way more than they value just being right. And those friends who are constantly texting you, just checking in, they do it because, quite simply, you are in their heart.
Section 5. The value of time. Because eventually we are all separated from the ones we love. All of these small gestures are acts of unseen love, and recognizing them is so crucial because there is an absolute universal truth we all have to face. Time is fleeting. One day, inevitably, the frantic pace of life is going to pull us in different directions. We're going to look back and desperately miss those late-night conversations about everything and nothing. We'll long for those dreams we once eagerly shared over a cup of coffee. Because as the days, months, and years pass by, contact can become rare, relationships shift. The vibrant living moments that we completely take for granted today will slowly distill into faded photographs stored in some wooden chest or buried deep in a digital archive. And one day, decades from now, our children or grandchildren will point at those old pictures, trace their fingers over the smiling faces, and ask, who are these people?
And in that moment, you won't remember the petty arguments. You won't remember the snap judgments made from only looking at the surface. You will remember the unseen love. You'll smile, maybe with a few invisible tears welling up, because your heart will be touched by a profound memory. And you'll look at those faded faces and simply say, it was them that I had the best days of my life with. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Who in your life is making unseen sacrifices for you right now? And what would happen if you finally looked beneath the surface to see them?